Well, let's start the program with some tragic news from Kenya. At least 50 people, including 8 children, have been killed in a bus accident in the Rift Valley town of Kericho. It's the deadliest road accident reported this year. 52 people were on board. Authorities say the 2 survivors are severely wounded. A local police official says the bus veered off the road before plunging down a 20-meter gorge. It was traveling from the capital Nairobi to the western city of Kisumu in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Now, the National Statistics Body says public transport vehicle accidents account for almost 11% of all deaths in Kenya every year. And despite efforts to improve road safety, the number of deadly road accidents has in fact increased by 7% this year. Let's take a closer look at those figures.
Kenya's road safety record is one of the worst in the region, with up to 3,000 deaths annually. According to a recent World Health Organization report, several factors are to blame. The WHO cites poor enforcement of traffic rules and regulations, corruption among traffic officials, drink driving, and unroadworthy vehicles. Statistics from the country's National Transport and Safety Authority show a 7% spike in road accidents this year. By the end of September 2018, 2,214 road users died, compared to last year, where 2,053 deaths were recorded over the same period. Pedestrians are the most vulnerable, with more than 850 killed in road accidents this year. Wednesday's crash is one of the worst in the country's recent history. In August, 37 people were killed when their bus plunged into a river in eastern Kenya. It had been traveling to Nairobi from the coastal city of Mombasa. And earlier this month, 12 people died in Gilgil, Nakuru County in a collision between a bus and a truck. Authorities have put several measures in place to improve road safety. At one stage, there was a ban on night travel, but it was later lifted after negotiations with public transport operators. Several transport companies have been deregistered and banned from operating for failing to abide by the rules of the road. Edmond Nyabola, CGTN.
Well, indeed, some worrying figures there about road safety in Kenya. Well, to discuss these stats a little bit further, I'm joined by CGTN's Robert Nagila here in studio with me. Robert, today's accident comes against a backdrop of some disturbing road safety figures in Kenya. We're looking at 3,000 people dying in road accidents every year. Why is this death toll so high?
Well, there's a number of factors really, Lindy. Part of it is, first, you have the national government, which is not a stakeholder in public transport. Now, the public transport sector has been left to the private sector, and they basically self-regulate. Not very well, if I may add, looking at those statistics we were talking about a short while ago. That is part of the problem. When you have national government not involved in its own transport sector, then there are bound to be problems. Number two, we have a traffic commandant for the whole country, who's not really in charge of traffic. He admitted that just a couple of months ago before Parliament. Now, the traffic has been left to various police stations within certain areas, and the commanding officer in charge is responsible for traffic in that area. It doesn't help that the police in Kenya are seen as the most corrupt institution in the country as well, taking bribes, especially the traffic police department, which has been year in, year out. So these are just some of the problems plaguing it. Number four, the transport ministry in the country is also seen as very inactive. That is part of the problem. Number five, we have a national transport authority, whose powers have been withdrawn because a couple of months ago we had a lot of people making noise that they were overstepping their mandate. The president moved in, took away some of their powers. And these are just some of the results, partly because of knee-jerk reactions every time there's a serious accident.
It sounds like what you're saying is that there's a lack of coordination from a national government perspective. However, we do see, the national government trying to take the necessary steps. One such step was the ban on traveling at night. That was lifted, though, earlier this year. Do you think it was effective in reducing incidents, and should it be reintroduced? And what other measures do you think could be introduced to try and reduce and save lives?
Well, there's a lot of experts out there who would disagree. They would say that, look, that was just another in a long line of knee-jerk reactions from the government after a particularly deadly incident. That's why it was introduced. Now, experts out there say, listen, if you really, about 15 or so odd years ago, everybody was following traffic rules. Why isn't that happening at this particular moment? So you need to introduce zero tolerance so that you ensure that every motorist, pedestrians, anyone who's using public roads adheres to the traffic regulations. And that includes the police, who are actually seen as a big problem. You look at also the National Transport Safety Authority that issued a certificate of inspection to that particular bus company. Now, if you look at the images that are coming out, the roof is completely gone, and that's one of the reasons why we have such a high death toll.
And let's talk about that a little bit more. I mean, public service vehicles are sometimes referred to in Kenya as, as death traps on wheels. You talk about people getting kind of, roadworthiness certificates, but still the vehicles are actually not worthy to be on the road. Tell us more about where this particular problem lies.
Well, now, this is something that probably needs to be looked at and investigated as well. And we have to start with the National Transport Authority. Does it mean that when their powers were reduced, they really can't operate within the mandate they are supposed to operate under? Does it mean that they do not have the capacity? We just don't understand what's going on. Meanwhile, the National Transport Safety Authority at this particular moment is also introducing new guidelines, new rules, adding more charges for motorists. So we need to look, we're not placing the blame squarely at the National Transport Safety Authority, but everybody from national government, the safety authority, the police, motorists, and the public themselves all play a role in this. So we're all to blame, and we need to dig deeper and come up with the solutions. And as experts say, zero tolerance needs to be adhered to.
Absolutely, zero tolerance is the way to go. Thank you so much, Robert Nagila, joining us here in studio on that tragic bus crash in Kenya this morning.